what are some of the persistent misconceptions or typical mistakes you find brewers make in their yeast handling processes? And I'm kind of tagging on this one. What are some of like those old wives' tales about yeast, right? Those things that just won't die. Like there's no science behind this at all, but it's like these persistent nagging things that for some reason get lodged in a brewer's brain and they still think it's a thing.
Old wives' tales, common misconceptions. Number one, I would say is, and this notion exists pretty repeatedly, this idea that you have to stress your yeast to get a certain flavor. It's kind of BS. Yeast stress doesn't taste good. Now, you can select a different environment, different food for the yeast, and that's going to change what types of flavors it makes. But I would never make the decision to stress yeast to push a certain flavor profile. I think that's really reductive thinking.
What are the strains that people tend to clump into that category?
Usually Belgians, any flavor expressive yeast, which there's a bit of truth in there. If you restrict the nutrition for some of those yeasts or increase the temperature, you might get more flavor expression. But you are also always going to risk, if you don't supply enough nutrition, for example, or if you operate the yeast outside of its standard range of temperatures or pitch rate or whatever, you're always going to run the risk of off flavors as well, right? So stressing the yeast is a great way to get off flavors in conjunction with the on flavors that you're targeting. That's going to make you have to take way longer to clean up your beer or, just do a bunch of extra work. So, we put a lot of effort into understanding how do we control yeast flavor expression and how do we get that expression without stressing it out.
That makes sense because, ultimately you want to, especially on the commercial side, ultimately you want to be able to use those things over and over again. I don't think anybody wants to get a pitch of yeast, run a batch on it and then drop it down the drain. You know what I mean? So kind of generationally, you want to be, that's one of the reasons is because you want to be able to maintain those pitches for multiple generations.
Yeah, that's important too. If yeast stress basically causes generational trauma, like it's multiplicative if it persists. Like if the yeast is missing something or, put through some kind of stress, then that effect usually multiplies.